Do you ever feel like your emotions are driving the bus and you're just along for the ride? Sometimes we all react in ways that don't make sense even to ourselves. There may be hidden forces at work within your mind that you're not even aware of in the form of psychological defenses. I'm Dr. Tracey Marks, a psychiatrist, and I make mental health education videos. Today, I'm talking about psychological defenses and how they help or hurt our ability to use our coping skills and dictate what kind of coping strategies we develop. This is the first video in a series on psychological defenses. Defense mechanisms are unconscious processes our minds deploy to protect us from feelings of anxiety, guilt, or other things that are emotionally uncomfortable. These are automatic reactions to internal conflicts and perceived threats, helping us to manage emotional pain without our conscious effort. Think of them as the mind's guardians, working overtime to maintain our psychological well-being, often without us even realizing it. Your ego is a theoretical part of your mind that uses these psychological defenses to process unconscious mental conflict. Unconscious means that they're beyond your awareness. And these conflicts are primal urges and desires that your mind finds unacceptable because they don't conform to societal standards or they conflict with your own internal sense of morality. Picture an iceberg with a small part above the surface of the water that's visible, and then much larger beneath the surface is this other massive part of the iceberg. These unacceptable conflicts lie beneath the surface of your conscious thoughts. What do these conflicts look like? Here are some examples of the mental conflicts that people can have. We have deep-seated fears, like dying alone or no one missing you. Trauma, watching your father beat your mother. Violent motives, wanting to kill your father. Immoral urges, wanting to cheat on your taxes. Not everyone feels conflicted about that, but some people do. Irrational wishes, wishing your father would die so that you don't have to deal with him. Selfish needs, wanting to run away from home and stay in an apartment so you don't have to face your kids and spouse. Unacceptable sexual desires, like fantasizing about being intimate with your sister's hot husband who works out at the gym and your husband doesn't. And then shameful experiences, like feeling unloved and feeling like the piece of crap that your father says you are. These are deeply buried thoughts that we have that our ego tries hard to keep beneath the surface so that we don't have to face them or be distressed by them. I get more granular and detailed about ego psychology and how it relates to anxiety and anxious personalities in my book called Why Am I So Anxious? It's linked to this video and in my mental wellness space store. So that's the purpose of defense mechanisms. Coping skills are the conscious efforts we employ to deal with stressful situations, emotional challenges, and everyday problems. Defense mechanisms are automatic, but coping skills are intentional efforts to manage our thoughts, emotions, and actions. And these skills are learned and can be developed and strengthened over time through practice and experience. So how are defense mechanisms and coping skills related? The kind of coping skills you use when faced with a challenge is a reflection of the kind of defense mechanisms you use. Defense mechanisms are put into three categories: primitive, neurotic, and mature. Coping skills are either adaptive, which is considered constructive, or maladaptive, which is considered destructive. Examples of adaptive coping skills are things like practicing mindfulness or seeking social support, and these things promote emotional well-being. Examples of maladaptive coping would be things like substance abuse or avoidance, and these things can make you feel better in the short term, but unfortunately worsen the problems in the long term. So here's the connection. If you tend to use primitive defenses, you're more likely to use maladaptive coping skills. And then some people don't consciously cope, but they rely mostly on these defenses for immediate but temporary relief from things that are or situations that are distressing to them. So the goal here is to transition from relying primarily on unconscious defense mechanisms to actively coping or employing adaptive coping skills. Even when you use adaptive coping skills, you will still use defense mechanisms from time to time. This shift to more adaptive coping skills doesn't eliminate the use of defense mechanisms. They're a natural part of our psychological makeup. I mentioned that not all defenses are created equal. The three categories of primitive, neurotic, and mature are on a spectrum from adaptive to maladaptive. Primitive defenses are immature and childlike. They are normal responses in childhood, but we're supposed to adopt more of the mature defenses as we get older. Some of the primitive defenses are denial, dissociation, and acting out. And by the way, dissociation is both a symptom and a defense, and I'll explain more in a future video dedicated to dissociation. Neurotic defenses are more helpful than primitive ones, but still less helpful than mature defenses. With neurotic defenses, you dodge the unpleasant feelings without processing them into something more acceptable. The behavior negatively affects your functioning or how you interact with others. Examples of neurotic defenses are projection, reaction formation, and intellectualization. Mature defenses help you cope with anxiety or distress by transforming these thoughts and emotions into more acceptable forms. You deal with the distress by managing it rather than escaping it. Some of the mature defenses can be made conscious and used as a coping skill to deal with distressing emotions. Examples of mature defenses are humor, sublimation, and suppression. So why does any of this matter? Psychological defenses are the ways that we separate ourselves from being fully aware of unpleasant thoughts and feelings. Understanding your own go-to defense mechanisms can affect how you manage internal distress, strengthen your boundaries, and improve your relationships. We all use these defenses like an automatic reflex. When you become aware of the ones that are not serving you well or holding you back in your emotional maturity, you can take control of your actions and make different decisions or experience things with a different mindset. I'll be talking more about these defenses in future videos. The next one in this series is a fairly common neurotic defense of projection. You can also watch this video on psychological flexibility. Thank you for watching today. See you next time.